Seems like old times, eh, Bats? You, me, a vat of chemicals?
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. And when you think about Batman games, more than likely the first to come to mind are the Arkham games. And why wouldn't they be? They're great games with a plethora of Batman's biggest baddies who all have their own parts to play in a bigger plot, with a lot of the most iconic and beloved voice actors returning to the roles they made famous on Batman the Animated Series. Well, way before any of those games, we had Batman Vengeance, a great game with a plethora of Batman's biggest baddies who all have their own parts to play in the bigger plot, with a lot of the most iconic and beloved voice actors returning to the roles they made famous on Batman the Animated Series. Sound familiar? In a lot of ways, I think this game could be seen as the blueprint for the Arkham universe. As a matter of fact, in retrospect, it's kinda hard to play this game without thinking of the later ones. But because of the passing of time, I think this is one of those things that often gets lost in translation. And because of how great other games have been, this one gets shockingly overlooked and underappreciated. But ultimately, I think it plays a vital role in both the animated series and the Arkham series, almost serving as a bridge between the two. Not in canon, mind you, but like conceptually. It's sort of the blueprint and an important piece of Batman gaming history. There are definitely moments that can come off as a little bit goofy or otherwise clunky. Like this entire sequence. Batman enters a room, doesn't see a doctor, puts out a missing persons report to Barbara back at home who asks,
"Did he leave a computer disk behind?"
And Batman's like, "Oh yeah, no, he did, right in front of me. It's, here on the ground." Or moments later when Mr. Freeze throws a glass tank at Batman, and this is the animation the game plays for the glass breaking. Okay, not exactly timeless. Or this moment where it makes it look like Batman is just casually watching a woman be abducted from afar. Not the greatest look. There's plenty of early PlayStation 2 goofiness, but honestly, it's almost a rarity. Most definitely there are some limitations here. Yet in spite of them, this game mostly holds up. One thing I'll always appreciate about the game is how it was consistently trying to switch things up, introducing new mechanics, new challenges entirely different from the mission that came before. You could play any level of the game and you'd never know what you were gonna get. One minute you're learning to freefall, and then the next you're piecing together technological puzzles to break into rooms. You could go from throwing batarangs at a deranged clown on a wrecking ball, to battling a giant one-eyed plant monster. There was no predicting Batman Vengeance. But as I was saying, I won't be talking in too much detail about gameplay. That's mainly because I'm not really much of a gamer, and I will readily admit that I suck. I actually picked this game up with the intention of making this review about 4 years ago with a friend. And it was such a nightmare between trying to control Batman who moved around like a tank and battling against the camera angle that wanted to get the least helpful angle possible at any given moment. It was so challenging that I literally put the game down and didn't pick it back up until I made this review. 4 years later. Yeah, it's not an easy play in hindsight. Definitely not the smooth sailing you might be used to in a Batman game by now. What I will say about this game, though, is that it immerses you in the DCAU. It literally feels like you're playing through an episode of Batman the Animated Series. And the game wastes no time throwing you right into it, as Batman rushes to save a damsel in distress from an explosion during the opening credit sequence. So here to tell you a little bit more about the gameplay is someone I'd like to consider a member of my extended Bat family, Channel Pup. Take it away, Ace.
Hi, Degenerates. If you don't know me already, I'm Channel Pup, and I know a thing or two about Batman. I think it's why V Infuso invites me to do these things. Someone around here's gotta know a few things about Batman, am I right? Yeah, it's probably actually him that knows more about Batman, but hey, I'm here. Now, when you're a little kid, you've got kind of the interests that are thrown upon you by, I don't know, kids' TV, your parents, and stuff like that, and Batman was one of the very first things that I just kind of approached on my own. That's not to say that my parents didn't love Batman. My dad was thrilled to to bits when he found out that I was getting into superheroes and Batman. And that interest was something that my parents really nurtured. I remember back when Warner Brothers shops were a thing, my parents took me to a Warner Brothers shop to get me a Batman costume, and I ran around the store wearing the Batsuit. I remember getting a phone call from Santa Claus that he couldn't get me the Batman action figure that I saw at the comic store that I really wanted. The reason being was because it was collectible, very expensive, and a kid my age would never appreciate that. Also, Santa was just my dad on the other end of the phone, but I did get some really cool Batman stuff growing up, and one of which was the very first video game that would be bought for me. Not the first video game I played, but this was, my first video game of my very own, Batman Vengeance. I don't remember exactly how old I was when Batman Vengeance was out, but I know that I was technically too young for the game. It said 11 on the box. I wasn't 11 yet. And being completely honest, yeah, this game is quite a complicated one for a kid to just pick up and play unless they are a particularly well-coordinated kid. But that also feeds into what I love about Batman Vengeance. This isn't just like a simple beat-em-up or platformer. This game really offers you a comprehensive Batman experience like what the Arkham games would go on to do years later. Even though it challenged me as a kid, I loved Batman Vengeance. The platforming and combat was cool, but what really sealed the deal was being able to go into like a first-person view and use Batman's gadgets or drive the Batmobile in the Batwing. There are parts of Batman's arsenal that even the Arkham games years later are yet to touch. Now, it doesn't weave quite as organically in and out of, say, gadget play and platforming and combat quite as smoothly as later games would, but the fact that this is all here shows that this is really kind of the blueprint for the Arkham series, which would go on to become one of the most acclaimed video game series of all time, and might I also say highly deserved, because I adore the Arkham games, and I adore this as kind of a piece of history that might have influenced them. I'm sure it did. Yeah, the movement by today's standards feels a little sticky. Going into a first-person view to get your gadgets up feels a little unintuitive, and the combat isn't really all that satisfying, but you gotta think, this was the first time we had all of these elements down in a 3D space for a Batman video game. So this game took place in the universe of Batman the Animated Series, or, well, its later iteration, the new Batman and Superman Adventures. And so it carries the art style and cast over from that show to this game. Which means we got more excellent performances from the late great Kevin Conroy and Michael Anzara, both playing Batman and Mr. Freeze respectively, who are also just the definitive voices of those characters. Sheesh, sometimes I get a reminder that Kevin Conroy's no longer with us, and it just feels so strange. Still stings, man. Still stings. We have, of course, also got the iconic and scene-stealing Mark Hamill as the Joker. So the pedigree on display here is all really strong, voice acting-wise. The new Batman Superman Adventures aesthetic has been translated really well to the 3D, all things considered, and the pre-rendered CGI cutscenes look really good. Remember the short-lived CGI animated show Beware the Batman? Great show, great aesthetic, but sorry, this is still what I wish that show looked like. Because this aesthetic is just amazing, and I gotta say, while I still prefer the original Batman the Animated Series art style, this one definitely translates better into 3D than I think that version would have. I don't know, I might be wrong. Now, story-wise, they go for kind of an episodic format, much like Batman the Animated Series itself, with the game split up into 5 episodes, each with their very own title card on the loading screens as well, and they're beautifully illustrated. Again, this game is just dripping with that Art Deco style, even down to just the title screen. I still remember the unsettling sound effects of the menu screen. Almost each episode puts a specific villain in the spotlight as well, with them being the main boss fight for that story. Episode 1 focusing on the Joker and Harley Quinn, Episode 2 featuring Mr. Freeze, Episode 3 focusing on Poison Ivy, Episode 4 just in general being more about Gotham's crime underworld, and Episode 5 once again focusing on the Joker, tying the entire story together. It's all a long con involving criminal investment and insurance fraud. Again, pretty mature for a tie-in game for a cartoon. It's like a short serial where the episodes feel kinda standalone, but they all tie together in the end, and that's really smart. This is a structure that makes Batman Vengeance still special today, and the closest thing we have to that structure now is more along the lines of Batman Telltale than it is, say, Arkham, for one example. I think for me, levels-wise, the highlight of this game is the SWAT chase. This is where the game really ramps up the intensity, as Batman has to evade the forces of the GCPD, who are just all over Gotham. Batman Vengeance is quite a claustrophobic and confined game, but this is where the game really opens up as you run across the roofs of Gotham, going through buildings, and then you have to take down a helicopter. The music by Sean K. Clement is just firing off on all cylinders. The red sky is just looming over you constantly. It's an incredible level, as Batman is forced to fight against people that he'd really rather not fight. As for my least favorite stage in the game, it's got to be the Batmobile chase. And it's a shame because, as a kid, this was the level I was looking forward to the most. Unfortunately, the Batmobile mechanics just aren't very good. I mean, what the hell kind of car needs a grappling hook to turn a corner? The depth of field and lighting on this stage isn't great either, so you can easily miss your turn and fail the entire level. And it's a real shame after how good the Batwing level was, but hey, at least we have that, right? They might have flubbed the Batmobile, but they got the Batwing dead right. I mean, again, also, it's just cool to have these vehicles in here. Every facet of Batman is just in this game. Even his criminal persona matches Malone. My favorite boss fight in this game has to be the Mr. Freeze boss fight. It really seems like that character just lends really well to boss battles. The atmosphere here is crazy, the music is excellent, Michael and Zara as Mr. Freeze just taunting you the entire way, how you have to use the Prometheum capsules to defeat him. It's just an incredible boss that gets my pulse raised every time I play it. In terms of least favorite boss, I would have to give that to the Poison Ivy monster. It's by no means a bad fight. In fact, the bosses in this game are actually really good. It's just that you're gonna spend most of your time just throwing batarangs at its legs. And once you know what to do, it is kind of ridiculously easy. I have no idea how my younger self was stuck on this for so long.
Episode 1, A Girl to Die For. The game starts off the way a lot of Batman stories start off, with the Joker causing trouble. For one reason or another, the Clown Prince of Crime has his eyes set on this relatively unknown Gothamite, Mary. He's kidnapped her son and is holding him ransom to the tune of $5 million. Which kinda makes you wonder why he'd want to blow her up if he already had her son and was waiting on her forced babysitter payments. As Batman works the case and saves her on multiple occasions, including from a later abduction, Batgirl researches back at the Batcave looking for answers. While she still may be Batgirl in name, and oddly enough, costume, seriously, you're in the cave, there's no one here, who is this for the benefit of? She serves more of an oracle role here, aiding Bruce in the fight against crime from the comfort of her own computer chair. But after saving Mary on multiple occasions from Joker's goons, this leads to a showdown between Batman and the Joker on Gotham Bridge. And this is a boss fight that I thought was the coolest thing I had ever seen up until that point in time. You have to throw batarangs at the Joker as he swings at you on a wrecking ball. Miley Cyrus, eat your heart out. After a fight with the Joker on the bridge, he drops Mary's son, causing Batman to go and make the heroic save, only for him to realize the ruse with this big reveal.
Oh, Batman, you saved my little booby trap. I don't know how I could ever thank you.
Now, there's a couple things wrong with this moment. Number one, you mean to tell me Batman couldn't figure out that Mary was just Harley Quinn in disguise? Mary, who had no record of existing up until Joker's threats? Whose son had no record of existing up until Joker's alleged kidnapping? Mary, who just so happened to sound exactly like Harley Quinn? And Mary, who has never been around in the same room as Harley Quinn, despite being surrounded by the Joker and those close to him? You mean to tell me Batman couldn't have pieced that together? You know, World's Greatest doesn't even come into play here. Quite frankly, I'm questioning if you're even qualified to be a detective. But then to make matters even worse, you're telling me that Batman couldn't tell the difference between an 8-year-old boy and a bag of flour? I was maybe an actual 8-year-old boy when I played this for the first time. And when I was a child, I knew that that was not one. I took one look at that and I noticed that it didn't look like an actual in-game human model. There was no voice performance coming from it. And despite the fact it was very clearly in danger, it looked like the Joker was the only one that was moving it around. So, you know, it was very easy to determine that that was not real. And let me tell you something, if you're thinking, well, V, you know, maybe you're not all kids, you were a smart kid. I wasn't. I was dumb. But Batman? World's greatest detective? He couldn't tell that this wasn't a person? You know, this is really making me rethink the whole vigilante thing. Like, maybe there should be a test or something before you put on a cowl. Something needs to be done. Actually, let's go ahead and take this a step further. Joker and Harley set this whole thing up. Harley pretended to be a different woman and hoped Batman wouldn't be able to see through a wig and presumably makeup. Surprisingly, Batman did not see through this amateur disguise. They then nearly had Harley killed, all in the hopes that Batman would come and rescue her on time. You know, I'm willing to think that Joker's crazy enough, and Harley is so meaningless to him that he'd carelessly use her like that. I can believe that. 100%. I absolutely buy that. But then they even had to stage a full-blown abduction for the benefit of Batman in attendance? I don't know, it just seems a little excessive. Like, it's a lot of work. And to what, though? You know, like, what was the end goal here? Was it reached? I don't think so. After a fight with Joker, Batman is met with a fist fight with the Joker. Of course. Which, let's be honest, is a bad call because we all know how those fights typically go. Joker and Harley bicker throughout the bout, with Joker at first annoyed at her for helping, and then being annoyed even more so for not helping. Out of revenge, Harley cheers Batman on as the fists fly, all the way up until Joker nearly getting knocked off the bridge. Batman tries to save him, but Joker forces his hand with the aid of a joy buzzer, leading to his shocking demise. Watching what she believes to be the Joker's death, Harley jumps off the bridge after him without hesitation. Luckily, Batman jumps after her and manages to make the save. The episode ends after a distraught Harley verbally quits her life as a career criminal. Episode 2. In Cold Blood. As you can imagine, since this is an episode titled In the Low Temperatures, we're following Mr. Freeze, as Batman follows his wrath that's left a bunch of icy near corpses in his wake, freezing Gotham Industrial's doctors and security in blocks of ice. I remember these levels being some of my favorite when I was a kid. I just found the frozen aesthetic really charming, and being able to beat your way through ice and discover new areas or saving security guards was just really a lot of fun. Just hearing some of the sounds from this level hits me right in my nostalgia. I mean, the early 2000s computer malfunction voice, come on, how could you not love that? It's a classic. Now, typically I found the bat grappling system really frustrating, but I always had a lot of fun getting around in these levels on the rarity that I could actually use that properly. Mr. Freeze's madness isn't without method, as he's hunting down chemist Isaac Evers. Batman eventually finds Dr. Freeze, just as Dr. Freeze finds Dr. Evers. After fighting off Mr. Freeze's all-female force, hey, I guess Harley Quinn was right, he really is the most woke supervillain. Batman chases after him in the Batplane, which, I gotta tell ya, it blew my mind as a child. When I say this game made you feel like you were playing an episode of Batman the Animated Series, I meant it. While it's not open world, the scope of this level really gives you a feel for the world that this takes place in. You're literally flying through the red skies of Gotham City. What more could you want? Batman doesn't stop Freeze, but he does manage to save Dr. Evers. When Batman questions him about his frozen beef, Isaac reassures him that he'll be safe working from his home office, and he'll use money to hire security from the grant he has from the Wayne Foundation. Batman, secretly being Bruce Wayne, obviously knows that this is untrue, so he decides to do some digging as to why Evers would lie, breaking into his facility the next day and looking for whatever information he could find. I don't know if it was the greatest idea to just let the guy go back to his job knowing that Mr. Freeze was looking for him, but then again I guess Batman doesn't really have any jurisdiction here. He's wearing a mask, not a badge. There's only so much he could do. Problem is, he's not the only one who thought to do so, as Mr. Freeze and his hired help are also breaking into the facility. It's then Batgirl comes to a startling revelation. You see, Evers is working on medicine for the cryogenically frozen. You can easily imagine why that would be of interest to Mr. Freeze given the state that his wife is in. Although if this game is canon to the animated series and follows the redesign, Nora was already awakened at the end of Batman and Mr. Freeze, so... Unfortunately, federal funding was cut from the project, as the board felt that the medicine was too unstable. However, it appears that the program continued to be funded by the Joker. Obviously, Joker isn't exactly a compassionate man of the people, so something's gotta give here. Batman searches for the good bad doctor, but only finds Mr. Freeze. A boss battle ensues that, yet again, really reminds me of the Arkham games, as the entire fight is spent hiding from Mr. Freeze and using your surroundings to get one over on him, trying not to take damage from a distance and sort of sneak attacking him and using the room to your benefit. Following the fight, Mr. Freeze's helmet breaks, causing Freeze to panic and in his desperation throw his freeze ray to Batman in an effort to save his life. I have always really loved this scene. There's not a whole lot to add to it, I just think that it needs to be appreciated. It's a good visual representation of the relationship between Mr. Freeze and Batman. They're opponents, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're enemies. I don't even think that they dislike each other. I've always felt that Batman feels a deep sympathy for Mr. Freeze, while Mr. Freeze has always respected Batman as an intellectual peer. Cut to the mayor at the train station with what looks to be Hush. This really looks like it was going to be the animated series version of Hush. Unfortunately for DCAU fans, you're going to have to wait a few more years until he's canonically added into the mix. And then even then, so you'll be asking yourself, will it canon? This may look like a fashion statement or wardrobe choice on the part of the mayor to show how pro-Batman he is, but it's actually the tracker Batman placed on Harley following the Joker's dip in Gotham River, on the back of his shirt collar where everyone would be able to see it. Batgirl is shown to be investigating the two as we enter episode 3. Plant food. Poison Ivy is doing some research of her own when a mysterious glowing vial labeled Gotham Chemical is dropped off to her. Not thinking twice, she pours some on a plant that she'd been feeding to a rabbit, and that plant then feeds on that rabbit. I don't know why Poison Ivy would feed her plants to animals when she clearly sees animals as being inferior to plants and wouldn't want to sacrifice any of her precious babies, but I also don't know why, if she loves them so much, she would just foolishly pour whatever radioactive crap is in that vial on them and wouldn't be worried about it damaging her plants. I think this is a problem with Poison Ivy in general. It's really easy to write yourself into a corner with her because there's a lot more she wouldn't do than she would. At some point, you gotta go, well, yeah, she's an evil plant lady. She wants to use plants to do her bidding to save other plants, I think. But like, at what cost? Does she not care about the floral life she's sacrificing? Does she ever second guess her actions? Does she even test whatever she uses on plants before it's being used on plants? I don't know. There's a lot to think about, and I'm already clearly overthinking it, so let's just move on. Batgirl informs Batman of the secret transaction the mayor made before asking for backup, which leads to Batman driving up to the train and grappling out of the Batmobile as it's still moving. Batman boards the near-empty train, taking on waves of new enemies, who look a lot less like Poison Ivy monsters and a lot more like Killer Croc kids. Though I think they're intended on being a reference to the new Batman Adventures episode Chemistry, where Poison Ivy does sort of have henchmen that look like this. The graphics make it a little bit hard to say for sure, but I believe that that is the intent. Batman saves Batgirl, I guess, but honestly it kind of seems like she was handling her own. Her health bar barely dropped when I played. While she may have been screaming for Batman's help, I just don't really think that she needed it. Like, Barb, you clearly had this covered. There's no reason to call in the big guns. Adding Batman to this brutality is really just excessive force. Next comes, as Pup so elegantly put it, the worst part in the whole game. He didn't even do this level the injustice it deserves. But I'm not a gamer, so let's just move on. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to move on to the next cutscene. The car chase, should you call it that, ends in a crash. Upon inspection of the scene of the accident, Batman questions why Harley would intentionally lead Batman to the scene of the crime. What does she have to gain in all of this? Once again, I would be remiss if I didn't compare this to Arkham, where the deck is stacked against Batman, and all his villains serve as the proverbial house of cards that are against him. Those cards ultimately being dealt out by the Joker and Harley. Here, it feels very much the same. They find what looks to be an apple that's hosting some sort of plant parasite in it. A parasite they believe the mayor may have also consumed. So Batman and Batgirl Scooby-Doo it and split up. Batgirl looking after the mayor, and Batman tracking down Poison Ivy. This led to my least favorite levels because I sucked when it came to Poison Ivy, man. I mean, I'm a very offensive person. You know, I've been told that my whole life. Everyone's always like, V, you're very offensive, and I say, thank you, I appreciate that. But my defense is trash. I've never taken any defensive damage in my life. When I play games, I take damage, like a lot of it. I am not good at not getting hurt. I screwed up a lot. I actually put this game down a couple times as a kid when I got up to these levels because I was really bad at them. And this game is completely unforgiving. Health was scarce. You just kind of had to suck it up and move on and pray to Raoul that you had enough health to make it to the next level. Poison Ivy's plant monsters are the worst enemies this game has to offer. And it offers you a lot of them. Like, too many. at least for my liking. And I like nature, but I'm instinctively going to burn down the next rainforest somewhere in protest. So, take that, Pixels. Anyway, Batman makes his way through dilapidated buildings filled with plant residue and Poison Ivy's demon seeds, until we finally get to a boss battle with this guy, which is undoubtedly a callback to a much earlier episode of Batman the Animated Series, House and Garden, where Poison Ivy's children/minions take on this very appearance. So it's kind of cool seeing the old and the new working side by side. I mean, I guess in present time they're all old now, but there's something heartwarming about this. After the brawl, Batgirl reports on Harley's motive, stating that Poison Ivy tried to get Harley to go along with her plan, but Harley refused because she was too distraught following the death of her beloved abuser. Poison Ivy's apparently since been trying to take her revenge on Harley over rejection, and now Harley's ratting her out, and also giving away that her apparent weakness is electricity, which I don't remember being a thing in the series. I always thought it was a lack of sunlight or water that would have done her in, but electricity works fine too, I guess. You just gotta hope that Livewire doesn't come to visit. Batman stumbles upon Ivy extorting the mayor, so she introduces him to her not-so-little friend. I have a lot of memories of this fight, but not a lot of memories actually winning this fight. After the Dark Knight tells the plant lady to eat mulch, he delivers the cure to the mayor free of charge. Because he's a billionaire. He's not going to accept money from the mayor. I mean, what is he, poor? Episode 4, Fool's Grave. Okay, so the start of this episode confuses me, because narratively, you'd think it would follow the last episode. But it starts with a quick flash forward to flash back to Batman starting to tell the story of the episode, and then it fast forwards once again, I think. I'm actually kind of still a little confused about the exact order of events, but whatever. What you need to know is that Batman is suspicious of the Joker's demise because, well, A, he's the Joker. The guy seemingly dies and comes back more times than Ra's al Ghul, and that's without the luxury of a Lazarus pit. And B, his henchmen seem to still have not gotten the memo, as they're very clearly still working in his name. Well, unless they're back to working for the Penguin, as previously stated. Batman questions civilian Harley Quinn, who doesn't seem to know anything about the Joker's return. Eventually, he tracks the face-painted goons down to Gotham Gas Works, where he finds that they're attempting to burn down Gotham City using the pipelines. Why? Because insurance fraud, of course. Well, at least initially. Joker's henchmen weren't following the orders of the corpse of a clown, but instead following the orders of Isaac Evers, who just so happens to share a voice with the corpse of a clown. He wanted to burn down Gotham Industrial. The clowns, however, have since taken over his plans and expanded on his initial vision, hoping to set the city ablaze and have the city streets match the city skies. Batman exits the building, bringing Evers to the waiting GCPD. But upon his arrival, Jim Gordon is attacked by a batarang, and with Batman on the scene, he's very obviously the primary suspect. The squad surround the Caped Crusader looking to take him in, and it's here that the player gets to pretty much reenact the opening of Over the Edge, as they play as Batman desperately trying to evade the GCPD. It's one of the most unforgiving levels of the game, and honestly that's saying something, but the whole playthrough just feels so cinematic. The rainy rooftops, cops at every corner as the helicopter swarms over shooting you. The drama is heightened by the accompanying soundtrack and the constant imminent sense of danger you realize Batman's in. And this all leads up to the coolest boss fight in the game, as Batman has to bring down a helicopter that thus also brings him down off the side of the building. Which, by the way, he hits the pavement and still somehow survives. Batgirl picks him up in the Batmobile, and that's where the episode started off. Very quickly, the modern Sherlock Holmes manages to deduce that Harley Quinn is at the center of all of this. Which, yeah, she's the only character with a connection to just about everything that's happened thus far. Wasn't really a brain teaser, that one. Batman decides to return to the last place he saw Harley Quinn. But with every cop looking for Batman, he'll have to go incognito. Which is when this game reintroduces Matches Malone, the really obscure disguise Bruce Wayne wore on all of 2 occasions in the show. Objectively, it's a bit in poor taste as it's just a scar and a beard, but I can't help but love it in spite of itself. While undercover, he finds all of Joker's goons at Funnybone Warehouse, realizing that the Joker is very much not dead. In fact, the whole game has been a part of his grand scheme. Because of course it has! And here we are, Episode 5, the big finale, Infernal Jest. Batman goes to confront the Joker, who basically has to spell it all out for him.
Here's the joke. I'm not dead, and Gotham is.
You know what, guy? If you have to explain the joke, it's not really all that funny, now is it?
Hilarious.
He proceeds to explain his plan in a way that would make Syndrome from The Incredibles blush. He just stands there shamelessly monologuing. Joker and Harley, now back in her Harley Quinn outfit, introduce Batman to one of their own not-so-little friends. And after a quick fight that sees Batman get the upper hand on this pre-yucko, Tiny over here is given an immediate rematch as the Joker makes his exit in a getaway blimp. And I always thought this was a real missed opportunity to have a Harley Quinn boss fight. I don't really see why she wouldn't be utilized like that in the game. She's already been a major player in the story, and if anyone was going to try to fight on behalf of the Joker, it would obviously be her. You can't even say it's a boy-girl thing, because Batman's decked Mr. Freeze's henchwomen without a care in the world. I mean, granted, he didn't fistfight Poison Ivy, but he did still hit a bunch of women with visors. They might have just been cold and had eye conditions. Unsurprisingly, Batman defeats this roadblock and follows the Joker to the blimp, where another boss fight occurs. And somehow the Joker has gotten considerably tougher since the last time you fought him. I mean, sure, the Tommy gun definitely made the man start off bold, but he didn't skip a beat when he dropped it. After defeating the Joker yet again, Batman managed to disable the gas and save the day, as he's been known to do. The Joker, regaining consciousness, decides he's not so fond of his room in Arkham Asylum, and without hesitation grabs his gun and jumps to what you would think would be his death. Batman, of course, stupidly and selflessly, jumps out after him just as he did with Harley, which leads to an aerial assault. We're talking about a fight in freefall, a brawl in the clouds. Joker relentlessly shoots at and throws gadgets at Batman as he tries to save him. And this is just about the most Joker thing I think I have ever seen in all my days. Biting off your nose to smite your face. Showing no care for your own life just so long as your foe loses his. Ultimately, Joker lives to spend another stay at Arkham Asylum, where he's in the company of all the other villains the Dark Knight's rounded up. Elsewhere, Jim Gordon apologizes to Batman, while sharing words about the power of the Joker, only for the Commissioner to realize that he's having that conversation all by himself. The game ends with a bat signal in the sky, and someone else calling out for the Caped Crusader, because the story never truly ends. And that is Batman Vengeance. An oddly titled, but otherwise pretty great game. I won't sit here and act like the gameplay is entirely fantastic, because a lot of the time it's not. Not all of the time, but, some of it. A good chunk of it. But there's so much love and care that went into making this game, with so much appreciation for the wider BTOS lore, that I think it's absolutely worth checking out. What do you think, Ace?
To anyone out there that has played the Arkham games and loves them but hasn't played this, what are you doing? Play Batman Vengeance immediately. It is the embryo of what the Arkham games would go on to do, but has a few things that it does itself, which it does, dare I say, a little better than the Arkham series. I'll definitely say the writing here is leagues better than the Arkham games ever got to. It does a fantastic job at bringing Batman the Animated Series into the video game medium, particularly with its episodic format. The art style of the new Batman and Superman adventures has been so lovingly recreated in the 3D realm here, and it works wonderfully. Honestly, visually this game hasn't really aged too badly. Sure, it's a little crunchy, but it still looks good, and it's because of just how good the art direction in the new Batman and Superman adventures was, and how well it carried over here. Batman Vengeance just deserves a lot more recognition and love for what it managed to achieve. This was the closest thing we would get to the Batman Arkham series before the Batman Arkham series, but it's got all of that Art Deco style of the new Batman and Superman adventures. I absolutely adore the soundtrack in this game as well. Sean K. Clement has delivered a very distinctive score for this one, which pulls cues from the Danny Elfman theme, but at the same time is very much its own thing. It's a very different style to what Shirley Walker was doing on the actual show. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, as much as I adore the work of Shirley Walker, of course. So if you love Batman the Animated Series, This is just the show in game form. They've put the story first here, and all of the gameplay feels like a vehicle for that story, but even then, it still manages to feel like a comprehensive Batman experience. It's a little clunky, it's a little stiff, all by today's standards, the combat is nothing special, but it's all here. All of those ingredients to make a great Batman experience are all here. Which is why, if you're gonna talk about the best Batman games, Batman Vengeance has to appear in the conversation somewhere. I think I'm gonna hand it back over to you now, V Infuso. You're the star of the show, you're the one that people came to see. I've had enough time here, I'm gonna shut up. Alright, hell yeah. Catch you on the flip side, degenerates.
I guess at the end of the day, that just leaves one question. Will it canon? I don't know. But that's for some other guys to figure out. So do me a favor. If you like this video, and be interested in seeing a video about the even less known Batman Vengeance sequel, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Batman takes that vengeance.
I was your least favorite YouTuber, V Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.